The big struggle that narrative in games is finding that balance between what are the mechanics, what's interactive, and at the same time then what's good storytelling. And there is a lot of discussion going on, and it's wonderful looking at games these days and how far the storytelling has gone and how much interest there is in the storytelling, because it didn't always feel like it's there on this scale, or how much story-driven games and games with deep stories are being played, and how much demand there is for those games. So that's brilliant. But it's still something that I think that we are learning a lot. Remedy having been there for 20 years. I've almost been working on games for 20 years and telling interactive stories for 20 years. Still learning a lot, almost every day, about what works and what doesn't work. And it feels like you can easily tack on interactive elements, but very often they come off as forced if they don't really kind of advance the mood and the agenda. And it's not always, in my mind at least, good to just add interactivity for interactivity's sake.
Are you talking about QuickTime events?
Well, for example, sometimes they work really well, but sometimes they don't work at all. And just as a mechanic, is that even the best way of achieving the goal, or do you need to go deeper and find deeper mechanics around the storytelling? There are many different ways of approaching this. We do it our own way. There are, dialogue trees in other games and things like that at best work really well. At worst, as always, are clunky and don't really kind of, advance the storytelling. Mm-hmm. So in many ways, I still do feel that cutscenes, for example, they serve a purpose, that they have a role to fill, and certain kinds of story elements, you can spend days and days workshopping solutions how to make this bit interactive, and the result is that it always comes across as forced, and you don't end up telling that story, or you don't, somehow the story is lessened then. Why fight it? Why not then take that piece and make it a cutscene, and then another piece that is serving the interactivity more, or is story content that sits better with gameplay, and tell that there. So it's always kind of finding those lines there and figuring it out. And I don't think that we have the best possible way yet. I think that we are on a journey with games into that direction. There are brilliant moments, but overall it just still feels like we can discover, we can make this better, we can find better ways. And for example, VR, I think that it's fascinating and it's really interesting, and in some ways making it really immersive and having you be there, it's an awesome promise, and it's interesting to see now VR starting to get to that level. Very, very interesting to follow that and see if there is, where does that get us in interactive storytelling?
You talk about trying to map out the future of interactive storytelling. Do you see the combination of the TV show and video game as an experiment, as a novelty for you guys? Do you think it's a possible future for the overall industry?
I think it's an interesting experiment, and I think that time will tell. And it's my understanding that things like Netflix, that they are looking into doing branching content and interactive content. So definitely there is interest into that direction, and experiments all around from slightly different perspectives are being made. Like Telltale is doing their own, game and show, and it's being explored. Whether that will really be something that will stick and be a big breakthrough, once again, time will tell. Audience or gamers will decide if this is what they want and like when they get to play.
Yeah. In your presentation yesterday, you mentioned the power, the appeal of starting with classic elements, as you put it, kind of starting with the tropes and moving up from there. Is this an approach you're taking just towards Quantum Break? Do you feel like you've been doing that your entire career? Can you just kind of dive into the philosophy of that a little bit?
Yeah, so we have a saying at Remedy that goes, some call them cliches, we prefer to call them classics. There is something to it, especially looking into pop culture. There are many, many elements that are in linear media have been seen and are familiar to people. That familiarity doesn't necessarily mean that, well, it's been seen, no one wants to see it again. Because, at heart, of course, stories are about certain things. And we've seen certain kinds of stories again and again and again. And very often it's about how you tell the story and how do you keep it fresh. But it might be just the same story or same elements mixed in a new way. I still think that from, what was very much the idea in Max Payne already, that nothing in there, I think, none of the elements is something that wouldn't have been seen in a hard-boiled crime movie or hard-boiled thriller book or something like that. But then bringing those elements together, doing our own spin of it and making it a game, making it interactive so that you are now in this world for the first time and you get to play through this. That already, I think, that is a very, very powerful promise to make. And that's kind of been the philosophy of a Remedy game, that it doesn't matter if it feels like, well, people have seen this in a movie. Obviously, I'm not saying that we are taking elements one-to-one and putting them in, but as a concept to start your thought process and kind of as a source of inspiration, it still feels, in some ways, what we are doing in Quantum Break, we start with a science experiment gone horribly wrong. Certainly there are many movies where you have seen that, many games as well, like going back to the first Half-Life, for example. Science experiment gone horribly wrong. This is our version of it. And it spins out into its own direction, but that starting point, it just, at the same time, I kind of feel that there is an element of humor to that thing that you recognize. Oh yeah, they're doing this. And then hopefully we are just doing it so well that people are, that it adds to the entertainment value because it's something that you recognize from other mediums and other stories as well.
Do you think players are going to be surprised by the overall story in Quantum Break when they get their hands on it? Is it going to be more bold and maybe more extreme than you guys have let on?
I hope so, yeah.